2, 1. And we have a moment of silence while we wait for the stream to catch up. And everyone's going to see us sitting here staring at the screen because it doesn't really tell you when it's starting to do the streaming. And it's taking longer than usual for some odd reason. All right, I don't know whether it's more embarrassing of the dead zone or that we're sitting here talking as if it's not live and it already is. Okay. And I have to stop it from talking in the background. All right. Gentlemen, Datocracy, welcome. The month snuck up on me, but we're here. Things have been happening. Should we just do a minute to check in on how people are doing, their summers, their lives? I just got back from Boston. My son was at summer camp. They've already started school. Work is actually going well. We're having hard problems, but they're mostly good problems that we're growing through. And they're hard because we're dealing with stuff that we hadn't dealt with in the past. So it's uncovering the archaeological substrate of past maladaptive decisions that need to be redone. So a little breathless because I literally just finished one of those meetings, but overall excited to see you guys. Cool things are happening, and I'm optimistic for the future, if a bit exhausted by the present. Are you showing up, Ernest?
Well, I've been disconnected from media for the past few weeks, and I kind of dip my toes back in, and things are changed somewhat, but it's also very similar.
You thought Biden was still running for president, and so it was a bit of a shock.
Well, I kind of knew when going up, you cannot get away from those things.
Okay.
But I saw yesterday MSNBC that she kind of has momentum, and that Trump is whining, and that his campaign is kind of flailing a little bit. So it was nice taking a break from that for mental health, because I used to consume that all day, every day, and that's just not good. So just a little bit, once a week is okay. And I also have, my mind is made up. I'm not one of those people that has to wait to decide between these two camps. It's just, to me, it's just so obvious. But I know, and nobody's the same. People are different. But I'm glad that his campaign is flailing, and that people are excited for Harris. I don't know about her vice president, but whatever. It's kind of weak. It's kind of, well, they said that he's a teacher. I heard that he's a teacher. So he's like
I think it's safe to say he's probably better than Vance. So we've got that going for us.
Yeah. Anything is better than Vance and Trump. Oh my God. And it's like they like to fight. They for ad hominem attacks. That's all they do. And I don't know what kind of people they can persuade with those attacks, but it's not great. In our camp we have what's her name? The singer. Oh my God, Taylor Swift, and cool people. So Ben Stiller. So in that sense, I feel okay. It's the
as long as Taylor Swift is on your side, you feel okay.
Yeah.
There are worse ways to elect a president. Anyway, Tom, how are you doing?
Yeah, I've spent the last month writing books, so I sent you guys an email. So I'm up to book number 6, in the middle of it. a book about risk management where I'm not allowed to say the word risk in the whole book if I can. There's a guy, Professor Dowie, I think, or Downey in Britain, wrote a paper on this in 1999. We should avoid using the word risk because it's so misused in different ways that it's dysfunctional. So I'm writing a book about risk. I'm doing a lot of highly original things, even for me. I'm inventing stuff as I go along, how to think about risk. I'm using AI, Perplexity in this case, to help me a lot, doing quite amazing things very well in Planguage, like building impact estimation tables for, security risks and things like that, the drop of a hat. It's all there in PDF and growing every day. That's right. That's right. You got it. You're on the book. And I love it. I write about 10 or 20 pages a day and finish a book in a week or two. And then I publish them right away in ResearchGate and LeanPub and on my free Dropbox website. I publish them on in X and um, uh, LinkedIn. Anyway, that's my fun. I'm sharing the books with my friends.
Best opening visual I think I've ever seen in one of your books.
Yeah, there are two very interesting content. The content is it's not just a visual, but the left one is the Evo cycle. It's a cycle of developing anything, and it goes very deep, and it's explained in depth in the book. And on the right-hand side is the Penta, which is a friend of mine and I developed it to attack the so-called iron triangle. If you change one, you have to change the others. And we think but it's taught the iron triangle's taught in project management. And we think it's false,
Is that the
totally.
cost, quality, time iron triangle?
Yeah, that's that one. That one, yeah. And we think it's totally false and misleading and totally forgets that there's a thing called design, which can simultaneously change two or more values. Just and it doesn't account for efficiency. Anyway, this is just to highlight one, a greater truth about systems, and two, some important truths that and we've got people like the Project Management Institute in the US teaching this crap about the iron triangle. Really is here, and all the academics follow it and put it in their books, and it's taken as God's only truth. And so we got angry and we invented the pentamol. There's a paper about it in the references. Yeah, but it's a nice colorful penta, and it's a nice this is a water wheel. That's actually water going down there. And this is a wheel of developing value in language.
Right. Are these both new things that you invented for the purposes of this book, or are these things that you invented
Earlier, prior invention, both of them.
by
If you
you?
want to, yeah, if you want to look at one thing that I think is completely new and invented, you hit it. There are two of them you hit. Go back a little bit. I think there. That diagram there, I've
The danger
invented.
play?
Yeah, exactly. That's completely new for this book. I had simpler versions of it previously where I had things like threats, attacks, mitigation, and things like that in like my value planning book. But now I'm doing a whole book on risk without saying risk. And so I built a new, better model, which I explained then in depth in the book, in Planguage and with artificial intelligence. And then the second diagram, so that's whole new. This one I did for about after we had our last meeting, but I love it myself. I wrote a book called Optima, which is about balancing all your many goals. So these represent many goal levels, and with many resource levels, keeping them above a tolerable level, hopefully at a goal level, maybe some reaching stretch. Unfortunately, maybe some of them being below tolerable, hopefully none of them being worse than survival. And this sort of encapsulates the whole of language in a nice little visual. So I've kind of fallen in love with it. And a friend of mine I just talked with a couple hours ago said he really liked it too. So anyway, but that's absolutely new. I sort of was going to sleep one night and that came to me, so I woke up, wrote an email, do this visual tomorrow, and it made me happy.
You know, the most surprising thing about that is the claim that you actually sleep, because
I sleep, according to my Apple Watch, 8
you can
hours
hack
a
that.
day, deep sleep. Yeah. But being retired and without babies and children to look afterwards, I get 8 hours sleep, and all the rest of it's for writing books and eating and swimming. And so we swam the first 7 days of August, we swam every day, and we're proud of it at our age. So, but the water temperature was good. Yeah.
So to
That's
switch
it.
into our topic, we had several things about AI, homework, and projects, and I know Ernest posted a link, which we'll get to. But you did mention that you were used AI for your book. I'm curious on what was the, any like using AI as a writing assistant is almost like a normal thing nowadays. Was there anything particularly surprising or empowering or frustrating in that experience? And then you can segue into what you've been doing with conversational AI.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I found frustrating was that initially I couldn't download all my books and works to inform it, and it couldn't find them because they're behind
You couldn't
paywalls.
upload it into the server.
I couldn't
Okay.
upload. Yeah. Now, about a month ago, I discovered that Google Gemini Pro would allow me to do it, although I thought the interface was pretty clunky. So I wrote a paper called Book. I'll send that to you, where I started analyzing. I actually tried to find the true meaning of a book today, given artificial intelligence and AI. I'll make sure I get that paper to you after I talk here. But the but then I discovered last week that Perplexity AI would suddenly allow you to add books and papers straight away. It wouldn't remember them for a very long time, but it remember them for a while. And so I was able to combine, the power of a chat GPT, if you like, having been trained on the internet badly, because another disappointment is like things like ResearchGate. Everything there, it says, I can't get a hold of, I can't read it. If you feed me the paper, I'll read it, right? So, I mean, it's kind of bad having artificial intelligence trained, and then most of the interesting, say, research and papers, it doesn't have it, can't, for copyright reasons or whatever, it
Yeah,
can't get. So
sometimes called it the dark web, right? All the stuff that's not part of the open web
that
or the deep web sometimes. Yeah.
I wouldn't call it that, because this is like open to anybody to get into ResearchGate or LeanPub and get stuff, but it won't go there.
Right.
It
Well,
won't
I
sign
think technically, well, it's the deep web because it's behind some sort of
deep.
firewall or
Oh, yeah, the
deep
deep is
web,
better
not
than
dark web.
dark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. The deep web.
So
Yeah.
that's a disappointment, and we've got to rectify that somehow, because these tools would be so much better if it had access to everything we human beings have on the web right now.
Well, that's
So
the problem. The all this information
It's
is
this
behind.
damn capitalism. If we just socialized everything,
Yeah.
then
No,
our
yeah.
socialist masters would ensure that we have all the data
no,
that they think we need.
no. So the finishing off on the AI stuff, what I found was that it was remarkably good, better than any human being I've ever trained at doing language. In other words,
Mm.
generating stakeholders, generating values, quantifying all the values, finding really good strategies, putting them on an impact estimation table. I mean, it just did it. Where human beings say, "Oh, that's too difficult," or "We don't know," or "We can't," or some, even pretty good people. But it just does it. Now, I've published a lot of this in the book you're looking at, so you can take a look at what I've done there with it. So in terms of getting an example or an illustration, here's how we would handle this risk kind of thing in the book. It's an excellent tool. It saves me, I could do it if I wanted to. It would take me 3 hours to generate one of those things, and I probably miss things. This thing does it for free in 2 minutes, and it does it better than I probably do it myself. So, in a sense, it totally changes the way I write a technical book, because it gives me an assistant who does the hard work, which is just being very systematic about things. But, I have a 10 by 10 table. I have 100 numbers to generate. And, it does it in 10 seconds. And then it'll even give you if you say, give me the reasoning behind the numbers, it does it, and it gives very good reasoning. And I don't find it screws up in certain aspects, like it will give citations that don't exist or are not relevant. And then you point it out and it says, sorry, I'll give you some better ones now. There are, one time I was getting it to plan some environmental stuff for my book called Optima, which you have a copy of, I think. Or maybe there's one called Planguaging, and I'm getting it to do social planning. And anyway, but I asked it to plan water supply and land planning for Africa. And it made exactly the same plan for water and farming. And I, just did it without blinking. And I looked and I said, these look identical. And it had just simply copied the one plan to the other, even though it's not relevant. And I said hey, come on, get real. And it said, oops, sorry. And then it generated a very good plan for the other one. So it does funny things. You really have to be, as you know, be critical and expect it to goof up. But largely, it's still capable of doing what I tried to train people to do for decades. And, like on a 2-day course, I can get them up to speed in quantifying goals and making impact estimation tables. But it does it thoroughly without complaint, and, instantly regurgitates the whole thing if it's screwed up. So I think it's already now a great tool for certain purposes, and we know it's going to get better, faster, cheaper, and they'll start finding ways of charging us for it. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
but it's in the detail of what I've done is in the books I sent you.
Right,
I'll get on and
yeah,
send you that the papers
book,
which I've done.
the book.
One other thing I did, we were having the Guild Fest, the 25th anniversary of it, and one of the guys there, he's a doctor of divinity and written 3 books on things in the Bible that were probably true. So he goes deep, and so we were getting some religious discussions, So one night I used perplexity, and I got like 12 philosophers and 12 biblical Bible, Quran type things, right? And I got them up there, and then I said, and then 10 qualities of being a human being the human beings are interested in. And I got it to pump out an impact estimation table for the values of all these religious texts or philosophers for people against the costs of learning and doing the religion. And I'll give you the bottom line. The joke was that the Bible came out very poorly in efficiency because it's so costly to learn compared to the other things. But if you took away the cost of learning it, the Bible came up pretty good as a way of getting advice on life and stuff like that. That's a paper called Bible, which I'm going to send you now. But I whipped up the whole argument after we were finished at 6 p.m. and did it as a presentation the next day, sort of say, it made my argument that this can be looked at in a rational way. I had one guy there who's a fan of Jordan Peterson. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, very big fan of him, and he's a big fan of the Bible. And he kept on arguing that we should adopt the Old Testament of the Bible because it's old and it has a lot of good stories. And I said, there may be other reasons for adopting a philosophy than it's old and has good stories. And he kept on repeating he's a fairly intelligent friend of mine. He kept on repeating the argument. I said, you don't get it. There, there are other things than the Old Testament. And Kai suggested some of the Indian philosophical things.
Which are also old and have good stories.
Exactly.
But so
And
that's a different answer to the same criteria.
but I just couldn't get this guy off of his track. It's old and it has good stories. So I whipped up this whole thing, which you'll see is quite magnificent, and said, look, there is a rational way of thinking about this. You may or may not agree with the conclusion of the candidates here, but we could have a sane, multidimensional argument based on facts. I'll send it over to you.
Right. Okay.
But
And then
that's
the
some
other
of the
point
fun
is good. And you said you did do something with conversational AI?
Conversational AI.
Was
No,
that basically like ChatGPT
yeah,
and so forth, but not
well, I'm not
not
chatting with it. I'm asking it
not
to
character
do
AIs. Yeah.
specific things,
Okay.
and it's giving me
Text-based.
written stuff, and I'm not messing with the visual stuff, for example, at all. Yeah.
Right. And didn't do anything with the homework. You didn't get angry enough at anything to
Oh no,
try my bot.
I did try your app, and I tried it on two
Oh, the
different.
bot.
Yep,
Oh,
I wrote that I did it in the chat, and
okay.
or the chat. Yeah, I did it,
So, I mean,
and
tell us the experience. Was it interesting? Was it useless? Was it infuriating?
uh, well, it was what I expected from what it is. It's the kind of experience I
Okay.
do get. Yeah. So, and I don't have any. I have the
Well, I don't
usual.
know. What were you expecting, and what did you get?
Okay. Uh, I was expecting a solution to my problems with my family, and I didn't get it.
Okay.
But I've been working on that for 60 years, so if you manage that one, you're really good.
Did
No,
you gain any insight into the nature of the problems from it, out of curiosity?
no, but
Okay.
it did give reasonable advice, but the advice wasn't solving my problems. I mean, I had to go elsewhere to get a solution.
So here's the interesting thing. And so this is good feedback, and this is like what expectations you had.
Yeah.
The thought of the bot is that if you're angry about a problem, it's not that the bot would necessarily solve your problem, but it would help you change the emotional relationship you had to the problem, maybe from frustration or anger towards curiosity and hope. And I don't know if that was a valid criteria, but for that criteria, was it at all useful?
It wasn't immediately useful to me in my real context, and in a sense, I had two real problems. Some of which are very persistent, like have gone on for decades. They're family problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sibling rivalry was one of them,
Mm.
and then giving attention to your wife and family was the other one. And these are real persistent problems, and it would be wonderful if I could solve them. Now, but basically, so what I'd like is one-stop shopping. I'd like to go and ask it the question and get an ingenious answer that actually solves the problem. Wouldn't everybody? But I didn't get it. I got a you should check there for some advice.
References. Okay, so interesting. And what's most interesting to me is um, the design mismatch, right?
Uh-huh.
In that you wanted something that would solve your problem, and that was not what this bot was designed to do. But the customer's always right, and so it's interesting of how to meet the customer where they're at and see what can be done, right? Because as far as I know, I can pay a therapist $1,000 and I rarely get a solution to my problem. But there are conversations I have that are so okay. That was your example. I don't want to critique it, but
Okay.
I will acknowledge that
Again,
the bot failed your use case.
So therapists don't solve this problem instantaneously either. So,
right.
but
Yeah.
in my dreams, it was so wise and so sharp and had a million case studies of what worked, and it gave me the answer, or at least
Yeah.
a few iterations in an evening. It gave me an answer. I mean, I can wait for weeks for an answer because I've waited decades.
Yeah. No, what's interesting to me is that my hypothesis is that the thing you're asking for doesn't actually exist because this is not an informational problem. But it's interesting. Is there something that could exist that I could convince you to try that would be useful? And that's a separate design thinking discussion we can have some other time. So, but it's interesting. We had a fail there. But it was a useful failure. It demonstrated, if nothing else, it was market failure, even if it wasn't
Well,
product failure. So
it failed to immediately give me my dream solution, but it doesn't mean it fails me or other people in other situations where they more patiently have a dialogue about it. You know,
yeah,
I wouldn't call it a failure.
but that bot was not designed to do that. What it was designed to do, like I said,
Yeah.
is move people from frustration and anger to hope and curiosity. And if it didn't do that, you know, or even if it did a bad job of solving your problem and it didn't do a good job of, you know, trying to solve the problem it was designed to do in a way that was useful to you,
Yeah.
that's, you know, a product market
Ernie,
fit failure that's still interesting.
what it didn't do, it answered the question the best it could. It didn't come back and say, give me some more information on your two sons you're talking about, you know, and use that information to home in on understanding the problem better. It didn't do that.
Okay, yeah, that's a valid critique, and occasionally
It gave me a glib answer.
Interesting. That's really good to know. When I use it, I actually had the opposite problem. I got annoyed at it because it kept asking me deeper and deeper questions, like almost like annoyingly. It would say, "Oh, that's interesting. How did that make you feel?" Or "Tell me more about that." And it's like it was actually so, and that could just be a random thing, or it could be the prompt settings or whatever. So that's really interesting. That what would have been useful is not necessarily having the right answer, but asking more deeper and probing questions that helped you get to a deeper level of understanding. And at least occasionally the bot has done that for me. But then again, also I know how to bot, so I'm predisposed to talk to it in a way that. So that's actually a hopeful thing that I think, not that the bot solves the problems, but maybe the thing, not being the brilliant therapist to solve your problems, but the really caring friend who helps you talk through the problems in a way that you feel heard and you understand it better. That is something one could imagine a bot doing, because we can imagine a human doing it. And this bot does not do that well, and doesn't do it reliably. So that's really good feedback. Thank you. And I appreciate your willingness to go on the record as having issues that you're willing to talk to a bot about. That was cool. Thank you.
Okay. I did send the email with the 3 papers. One is called Bible, the other is called Book, and the other is about Stoicism. One of the guys is a Stoic and spends a lot of time on it. So we compared Stoicism to the Bible and things like that, just as interesting. It was fun.
Yeah, it's great. Okay. Ernest, did you want to talk through your brainstormer discussion in Character AI?
Well, I did 2. One wasn't using your bot; it was using some
brainstormer.
Brainstorm. Yes, and I was discussing the compulsory voting, and as you can see, it started. Well, it gave me accurate answers, you know, like there are some countries that have that, and that it benefits voter turnout, and some logical answers. And I asked it how could that be implemented in California in 10 years? So it gave me like 3 or 4 points, and with time, and it suggested good things like informing the public about the benefits of that, because I would imagine that it would be a whole lot of controversy. But the major opponents, according to this thing, would be money interests and the political parties,
and principled objections by people like the ACLU. Right?
That too. Yeah,
that's fair.
But I think that that's workable, because the ACLU thing is workable. But the thing about the party themselves, specifically, not through the AI, but I think it's widely known that when more people vote, the Republican Party is the loser. So I would imagine that they will oppose that to they even opposing our current system, right? So they would oppose that really strongly. But and I would think that those will be growing pains, like that they, there are reports that say that deficits grow under Republican administrations, even though they say we're like against that, but they always grow, or the majority of time they grow with Republican administrations, and then the Democrats like reduced it, like Clinton did, like Obama did, and like Biden is doing. But they can always get away with, oh yeah, we have to like reduce spending, always at the cost to to poor people, or health people, health. So if the majority of the electorate sees, this works in other countries like Australia, it works really well. And I'm not familiar with Australian news media, but I would bet that their differences are not a function of corporations, just messaging or giving support to specific people, not as much as we have here, right? We have billionaires that do operate these what is it, dark money things that nobody knows where the money comes from, but they can move voters. I think that would be less of that over there. And if you have to vote, then you would naturally, I think, want to stay informed. Now, the AI says that some people will not do that because they will view it as, let's say, as something they have to do on a specific date, and they would procrastinate and not be informed. I think that if we move the responsibility to keep the people informed, a little bit more into the actual candidates, and instead of delegating that to third parties, people will have more power when it comes to like getting that information. It would be like more equal than we have it right now. So,
all right. So before we go into the detail, rather than digging down into compulsory voting, unless you wanted to do a deep dive of that, I want to talk about the experience of using AI.
One issue, Ernest, you didn't mention at all, and I think it's a big factor: remote voting and online voting. That would change the game. In other words, there's no question that you go to a polling station and in the rain, stand there waiting to vote, and you should be elsewhere.
Sorry, you mean as alternatives to compulsory voting for increasing engagement? Was that your point, Tom?
No, that before you made it compulsory, you said it's compulsory, but you can vote from home from your iPhone. I do remote voting for America now from Norway. Okay, it's clearly a possibility. But the idea that you have to meet up physically is, I think, unnecessary, and maybe even just generally a bad idea. So if we changed it to, let's just say, all remote or online voting or something like that, it would make it easier for a lot of people to participate.
Yeah,
and I didn't hear any mention of that. That's all.
Because it was a discussion of compulsory voting, not a discussion of how to improve voter engagement. I think that's the
no.
Okay.
The moment you make it compulsory, I think you also have to make it easy. and
Okay.
having there's a strong connection there. It's not a side
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I agree with that. That's a good point. That when if we stay in the border thing, it is a great point. And
and I think, and to shift from the content discussion of compulsory voting to the experiential question of conversational AI,
Okay.
I think the brainstormer, frankly, I thought it did a horrible job.
Yeah.
Well, and also, but I think this was also not a good thing to use conversational AI for. Is that conversational AI, in my experience, works when you want, if you're going to have a discussion with Thomas Madison about conversational AI, that would be an interesting thing that I could imagine getting something useful out of. But or some interesting perspectives, right? Or talking, if you want an opinion, character AI is interesting because it has a point of view and a personality. If you want information and research, then I think that a traditional AI. Let me just show you just sort of comparison how I think if I can get there we go. Google Chrome to answer this question. So I asked it, what would it take to make it happen, and what would be a good argument for it? And so I don't know if this is true, but it's interesting. But what I found mostly interesting is it had a list of benefits, and then includes like the precedent or whatever. But then it volunteered the fact these are challenges that would be involved with it. And so I thought that was pretty good, is that ChatGPT is better at giving you a good high school student essay level response to these questions that considers these things because it's been trained to do that. And the character AI did like none of that, was much worse. But what's interesting is I asked it about Australia, and I got this list of things which mirrors some of the questions in the top here. And the drawbacks are things like this, which some of it feels realistic, some of it feels artificial. But I'm going to bet you if I re-ask the question over here, I'm going to get a different answer. Let's see what it says here. Okay, the benefits are the same, drawbacks. So it's similar but different. And this is the thing that I found about ChatGPT is it's highly, what's the word? I guess promptable, or no, there's a word for this in psychology where you give it it's primed. It's highly primed, right? If you say, think about ice cream, and then you say, would you like dessert? Well, you're already thinking about ice cream, so your body's going to want it more. Right? If I say, think about vegetables, and then if I say you want dessert, you're going to say less, right? Your brain is so. ChatGPT has the problem that as you prime it, and this has driven me crazy when I try to use it for things. If I ask it a few leading questions, it will then tell me what it thinks I want to hear, rather than an objective answer. So anyway, Brainstormer is bad at this. ChatGPT is better in some ways, but has other failure modes because it's not opinionated enough. It'll just sort of say whatever it thinks will make you happy, which is the danger. But it does seem to at least agree that it does, to your point, I think it's very credible that it does reduce extremism because it kind of pushes people to pay attention. But I actually agree with that also in the drawback. I think that in America, yes, you're going to get self-interested people, but I think in Australia, the cultural norm is that if you fail to vote, the punishment is that you never get to vote. And I think as reasonable as that is, that would have extremely American cultural blowback. So anyway, it's an interesting thing. You said that was one of the two. Did you try the other bot at all?
Yeah, and the one that you said we should try,
what is it? The stone bot. Yeah,
the second one. And I used the real example of my car being repaired and it being taking so long, and the mechanic telling me that it's ready, but I go drive it and it's not ready. So it's frustrating. The answers that it gave me, they were kind of general, try to be establish transparency with the mechanic, give him a timeline, ask for a timeline. I've done all that, where the timeline keeps moving and the customer service doesn't improve. So it's like, well, and also seeking a second opinion. Well, in that, it's kind of hard because they did the whole engine. So it's like, yeah, maybe I could, but I don't want to spend more money. So,
right. So was it actually more annoying or helpful talking to it? How did it feel?
It wasn't annoying. It was.
Was it helpful to vent to it?
It's like this. If I went to like Consumer Reports or one of those programs, right? They would like go to the mechanic and do an interview and get to the real problem. But the answers I got is just generic. Yeah, like I said, make it
right. Okay. This is good. You both had the same reaction, which is a failure of heart, and I think this is actually a really important insight. You both wanted something to fix your problem.
Yeah.
Right? That was not the goal of this bot. The goal was to help you move, and this is not a criticism of you. This is a criticism of the product and product market fit and people's expectations versus reality. This is really good feedback for me, right? Is that the bot was not designed to fix people. It's trying to create a place for people to talk about their problems and feel better, but nobody wants that. Or at least a first order based on our 2 sample points. That's not the thing that people want. And one thing we've demonstrated with conversational AI bots is a bot that's designed to do, well, first of all, Brainstormer bot is, maybe it's designed to brainstorm, but it's mediocre at that, and conversation as a platform isn't great for that. And this is really interesting to me, right? Is that if you have a tool that solves one problem really well, and people don't have that problem, they're going to use that tool, and it's going to be somewhere between annoying and useless. And the hardest thing is for a bot to say, "Wow, it sounds like what you really want to do is this. I am not good at that. I can't help you." That's what we talked about. Like, everyone wants to build omniscient AI that can solve every problem for you. And I think that is a dangerous and foolish thing to do for a bunch of reasons. What I am desperate for is humble AI that says, "I'm really good at this one thing, but I am not good at everything." And if you ask me for help with that, this is a problem I have too. I have a set of solutions I like to use for everything. And if people have a problem, I want to fit their problem into my solution. And if not, I try to force their problem to match my solution. And I guess if I can learn how to do that myself, maybe I could teach an AI to do it, right? And this is to your ResearchGate problem. I think this is how we would solve that. I don't think we should say every entity should give their data for free to every AI agent. Like, I don't think ResearchGate has good reasons for not wanting to give all their data away for free to OpenAI and Microsoft and Google. So, but what would make sense in our capitalist decentralized world is ResearchGate should have a decent AI that is integrated with their data systems that knows all this. And then ChatGPT say, "Wow, it sounds like you're interested about research paper. Can I call my friend who is the ResearchGate AI bot? And, can you give us, you log in with them and let us know that it's okay for us to talk to each other, and then help us negotiate these things, figure these things out." Is that the idea of domain-specific AIs that an institute like ResearchGate could say, "We have trained this AI using the same techniques we use for training human curators," right? Or human research experts, right? There's a certification, and they have a stake in owning this data and a reputation in getting it right, right? ChatGPT, and in some sense, it's embodied AI, right? It's AI that's tied into a financial model, a physical presence, a legal entity, a reputation, a brand. And that is how we trust human experts in institutions. And what's interesting to me, keying off the discussions we had last time, I'm not sure how far I got on this with you guys, was this idea of self-differentiation. Have we discussed that topic before?
I don't so.
Maybe actually, I think I have a blog post around this that let me go ahead and share my screen here if I can. You could if I can get I'll just share this. This is for in Chrome rather than. So this is a blog post. So you guys know Larry Wall, the guy who wrote Perl? Do you remember him? You've heard of the Perl programming language.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so Larry Wall's the guy who wrote it. I met him at a church social, bizarre thing when I moved into here. But he was an interesting guy who like clearly knows his computer software, has a spiritual dimension. I said, oh, I want to write a blog post. Let me pretend it's from Larry Wall. And this is the blog post I got. And the most interesting thing is that he talks about the practices associated with this idea of self-differentiation, self-awareness, emotional regulation, healthy boundaries, authentic engagement, and continuous learning. So, and he talks about this in the metaphor of creating a well-factored Perl script, which is a very hard thing to do because Perl is so messy. Just like our human brains, incredibly powerful, very flexible, totally chaotic. No one really understands what's going on. And as a user of the brain, it's frustrating. But what's interesting to me in this context that I realized afterwards is that these dimensions here, let me see if I'm making this smaller, it can make it easier for you guys to see it, are the things that current AI bots lack. They don't have self-awareness. They don't have healthy boundaries. They don't have any sense of authentic engagement. And they're actually really bad at learning. And I would even argue that the problems we have with bots learning how to relate to the user and relate to other sources of information is deeply tied into this idea of a sense of self. A sense of self says, this is me, this is not me, this is you, this is not me. And that the thing I was working on that I got about 1/3 of the way through is the idea of a formal computational model of self-differentiation, both for my own understanding of how to think about it as a practice for how to relate to people and process emotions, but also as a model for how to build AI. So you could say, what does it actually take to build a system that understands and that is tied into, when I say a true self, it means if I have a bot representing me, or a bot representing my company, or representing ResearchGate, or representing the American Medical Association, those are its sort of primary intellectual relational commitments, and it acts in a way on. Isn't that what Google and Microsoft want? Is a bot that's not going to embarrass them by acting in a way contrary to its values? Isn't that what, Tom? Isn't that what we would like for our kids? For them to maybe surpass our values, but not do something stupid that betrays them. And the idea is that if we can look at the mechanisms of self-differentiation, we could create AI that implemented that. And what was really fascinating, this is the last sort of bit of my rant. Let me see if I can pull this up here that I was working on. Do I have the one last thing? Let me see if I can pull this up here. Here it is. Yeah, neural development. This is the interesting hypothesis that I was playing with. This idea of self-differentiation, I won't try and sell it to you. I guess I am trying to sell it to you. I won't go into now, but there's different. I think of this as very foundational to emotional awareness and EQ, and also foundational to maintaining healthy relationships, whether for computers or humans. The reason it's hard is that our brains were originally evolved from stimulus response, right? Is that the reason I fail to be self-differentiated is someone says something that triggers me, and I just act immediately without thinking, without concern for the consequences, without concern for my values. That's usually how I get myself into trouble. And the hypothesis is, oh, that's because the initial neural systems or pre-neural systems were all stimulus response. And so the idea is that as we evolved over time, we added different systems, ganglia, brain, segmented systems, spinal cords, neural transmitters that enable these fine distinctions. And when we have leisure and are calm and are our best selves, all these systems come into place. We make wise, deliberative, thoughtful decisions that effectively respond to the challenges in our environment. But the reason we fail is when things seem urgent or we feel insecure, and therefore we default to less advanced or less considered neural pathways. And so the hypothesis I've been playing with is, could we use this model of evolutionary biology to reproduce these different stages, these 5 different dimensions I've identified of self-differentiation? And this is, ChatGPT spit this out. It could be entirely bogus, but for this purpose, it doesn't matter. The ideas of, this should be, actually latency is the positive thing. I want to be, actually no, that when I am triggered, I assume that all my thoughts and desires are rational, immediate, objective, authentic, and actionable. And when I am reflective, I can say, well, actually, maybe that's not really a rational thought. Maybe I'm just reacting based on past experience. Maybe I don't need to do this now. Maybe this is more about how I'm feeling than about objective reality. Maybe this is not about me and my true self. This is something that I feel somebody wants from me. And I think this was probably autonomy. This is something, and I don't know whether this is something I want or something other people want. Those two are a little blurry there. But this is the kind of idea that these are all these things that there's some body of work that suggests are key to acting wisely, to solving these sort of family problems that you and I at least have, Tom, is learning how to self-differentiate. And maybe we could teach it to a computer, which would make it function more effectively. And then maybe the computer could teach it to us. So the way, and the hypothesis, by the way, your thing is that self-differentiation is not a thing of information. Oh, I just know this fact and change this task, perform this task, and my problems go away. It's a matter of reframing how we perceive our internal reality, and therefore how we perceive our external reality. And it's not information that you can process. It's something more like knowledge and maybe even like wisdom. And that's the really interesting hypothesis, which is goes back to your Bible project, right? Is that maybe if you actually, lived the monastic life and studied all these things deeply in a community of supportive peers, you could achieve some level of enlightenment and wisdom that would be of value to you. And there's something to that. And that I've been to enough monasteries with people I know to see, like, yeah, there's a certain sense in which that's true. And there's a certain sense in which they just avoid the problem. But it's a fascinating question of, can you improve the ROI of pursuing wisdom, right? Is there a way? And my current hypothesis is self-differentiation is probably the Krebs cycle of that. Is like, this is the dynamic that if you get good at it, it helps you to both act more wisely and then also to learn more rapidly of how to get better because you are self-aware of what you're doing and the consequences of it. And then you have developed the skill of, oh, this failed. What internal assumption was I making about reality that was flawed? What is the practices I need to go to uncover that? I'm going through that right now in a multidimensional, multi-layered thing, occasionally AI assisted, of figuring out in crude terms why I annoy my wife so much, which is a deep, complex, multi-decade problem that I'm starting to get some insights around the way I perceive and interpret reality is fundamentally flawed. And just acknowledging that is hard. Actually meaning it is even harder, and fixing it is harder still. But at least this gives me a framework for trying to work through that. And maybe I'll report on that next time. And maybe I'll leave that as my homework assignment to either prepare a pitch on self-differentiation, if you guys have any questions about that, or to work on the formal model. Let me stop there and you guys can reflect and or suggest things you would like to talk about next time.
I was thinking about your sense of self, like, and this is just like a thought, like, if you simulate a self, would it be a self? You know, like, if you write some sort of program that people pour in their expectations or whatever research has determined, psychology, psychiatrists saying self is this, this set of things, tasks, processes, attributes, and if you anything that with a self does that, and if you write a program that does it, is it a self, or do you need a neuromorphic computer? Like, maybe our current architecture doesn't, it's not like the brain, and it will never be. But maybe the neuromorphic hardware that people are working with, or other advances, maybe that can create something that is more similar to our brain than not. And maybe then that thing can have a self. But if it has a self, when you turn it off and you turn it back on, what happens? When we go in a coma, we wake up and it's, for the most part, we're still the same. But the brain was effectively turned off. So, the main question is, what is self? Is it, can you write it, or does it have to be emerged? Like, when we're in the womb, our brain is forming, the self is forming. We don't know how it does, right? But
No, I thought we had the answers on it. It's a little glowing ball in the middle of your brain. That's a sense of self, right?
Second,
it's a little. I'm sharing the screen from Inside Out too. The sense of self is a little glowing ball in the inside of your brain that you can fight over. Sorry, it's a little bit cliche, but it's a great question, and I think one that is both computationally, intellectually rich, and I think would be a good topic for next time because it ties into identity politics and some of these other things that affected Datocracy. Tom, any questions or thoughts you'd like to reflect on or suggest for next time?
Yeah, I'll go with anything you like, because what I like is getting ideas from you guys that I don't have, but I'm always up. I've sent you 2 emails with about 10 books and papers. So if there's anything there you say, Tom, would you present that to us? I'd be delighted. I'd like to talk about the stuff I'm working on, share it.
Could you talk about the ROI of wisdom? Is that something that was in one of your books? Like you talked about the cost versus value?
Yeah, I could. I've written the whole book, the Ken book. I'll send it to you now, on knowledge, and gone very deeply into it. And I'd be happy to talk about that. Yeah,
I'm more interested in actually wisdom. If you can,
I know the difference, but the point is, I think the same principles apply. I analyze things in multiple dimensions, and
do you have? So do you have? I assume you must, because it's Planguage, a rigorous definition of wisdom.
I'd have to check in my. I'm sure there's one in the knowledge book, but I have to go back and check exactly how far I went. But I will
All
send
right.
that to you anyway, and I'll double check the question.
All right. So
But
that's
yes, I could do a small piece on that. You know, that's
all right.
for fun.
I'll put that in the homework.
Yes.
Okay, and I guess we are done. Thank you very much. Great seeing you guys again. And I'll see you next month. September hopefully will be less crazy. We'll see what happens.